Hey Rip City, this is Anfernee Simons, and it's time to open the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Trailblazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, episode 111 of The Briefcase. I'm your host, Casey Holdahl, and we're a week into training camp, and unfortunately, the Trailblazers, already with one significant injury, and another injury that is not necessarily significant, but still an issue going into the regular season, particularly because one of the players that has the injury is a player that's had injuries in the past. So not the greatest news after a first week of practice, but things going well down in Tualatin. Team is heading out to Seattle on Tuesday to begin their preseason schedule, which starts on Friday. We'll talk about the injuries, we'll talk about the preseason, we'll talk about FanFest, and we'll hear from both Anfernee Simons and Scoot Henderson at Media Day on this edition of The Briefcase. Well, someday injuries might not be an issue for the Portland Trailblazers, but it's not going to be this year. At least it hasn't been this year thus far. The news coming out this weekend that Shaedon Sharpe is going to miss at least 4 weeks, up to as much as 6 weeks, with a shoulder injury. Do some press release reading here. Shaedon Sharpe has suffered a small posterior labral tear in his left shoulder, an MRI confirmed this week. Sharpe will begin rehabilitation and is expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks, as I mentioned. This is Shaedon also coming off of the fact that he had his season ended early last year because of a core muscle surgery that he'd had. The hope was that he may be able to come back early, play a few games last season so he wouldn't have such a long layoff before playing games this season. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And now, even more unfortunately, Shaedon's going to be out at least for the next month, meaning he'll miss at least the first couple weeks of the regular season. I'm guessing it might even extend out to that 6-week realm because they're definitely going to want to make sure there's no other significant injuries there. It's very similar to an injury that Shaedon had during his rookie season, actually at Summer League. Some of you might recall he took a knock, only played a few games that Summer League, was basically had that shoulder immobile. That's the way it is now. He's got that shoulder in a sling. The hope is that with rest, it'll get to a place where Shaedon will be able to play without any kind of additional surgery. Hopefully that is the case. He didn't have to have surgery the last time, ended up playing 80 games the rookie season. So the hope is that he has a similar rehabilitation this time, at least I assume that's what the hope is. But definitely not great news, considering especially that, as I mentioned, Shaedon missed so much of last season because of that injury, wasn't able to come back. And again, a core muscle injury, not a shoulder injury. So this is a different thing. But the fact is, he missed the majority of last season, the entire second half of last season, due to that injury. And now he's at least going to miss some of the first part of this season due to a different injury. That can be really hard on a player from a mental perspective. You know, when you go that long without playing, and Shaedon is a guy too, you know, in college, didn't play his one season at Kentucky. So he's got some experience in terms of kind of having to sit and wait. But once you make the pros, once you're starting to kind of progress as Shaedon has, you know, to have to sit out for such a long duration that he's going to have to sit out at this point now. You know, he did get to play during the summertime, but it's different. You know, when you're not playing in actual NBA games, the muscle memory is different, the conditioning is different, obviously the pace, the speed, the understanding what your teammates want to do is different. So it's really a bummer that Shaedon's not going to be able to be out there, at least to start the season, for a number of reasons. One, just because of the way his season ended last year. And two, you know, I really feel like, and I've been saying this, you know, since we first really got eyes on Shaedon his rookie season, you know, I really feel like Shaedon is kind of the key to what this team is going to do from a growth perspective. I feel like he's absolutely kind of one of the cornerstones of the building that they're trying to do at the practice facility in Tualatin to build this team into a winner. And there's just not actually a whole lot of positional depth at that position too. I think Shaedon is a straight 2-3 in the NBA. You know, you got Matisse, you got Chris, but like no one else really necessarily to step in as a scoring 2 guard on this team like Shaedon would be able to fill. So, you know, the fact that Shaedon's going to miss those games is just bad in and of itself. The fact that they don't have a ton of depth at that position is also not great. And Shaedon is just the most exciting player on the team. I think it's safe to say. I don't think that's really kind of making any broad statements there. A guy who, you know, between his skills and athleticism is a guy who people want to see out there. And again, as a guy who, you know, if Shaedon's able to reach his potential, the ceiling for this team increases considerably. And now we're going into another season where, at least to start, he's got an injury. You know, that's really unfortunate. Obviously, Shaedon incredibly young, you know, a long way to go in his career. But just a real supreme bummer, particularly this season. You know, your team's kind of starting fresh. You know, there's an opportunity for everyone to get minutes. There's an opportunity for competition. And then to lose one of your main guys in Shaedon Sharpe in the first week of training camp, that's a pretty big bummer. And another guy who had his season ended early because of injury last year, Robert Williams III, and the season before that actually as well. You know, Rob is out for the next 2 weeks with a grade 1 hamstring strain that he suffered during training camp. You know, luckily it's not on the same leg as his knee injury. His knee was on the right, and my understanding is this is on the left, the hamstring strain. So, one of those kind of compensation injuries that you kind of expect to happen. Obviously, you would prefer for that not to be the case, and you would love for guys to just be able to come right out of injury and be able to get back into the swing of things. Rob has been rehabilitating now for dang near a year, so I know he wants to get out there. But, these are the kind of compensation injuries, kind of the things when your body is kind of getting back out there and getting back into game shape. Things like hamstring strains, particularly when you're a guy like Rob who hasn't played, competitively for almost a year now. That's the kind of stuff that's going to happen. And particularly with a guy like Rob who definitely has an injury history, they're really going to go out of their way to do everything they possibly can to put him in the best position for when he is able to get back on the floor, he has success. So, what I'm saying is that, for a guy like Rob, I don't know exactly the nature of the hamstring strain, but my gut tells me that, maybe if it was another guy who hadn't had the injury issues that Rob has had, maybe that player plays through that at training camp. For Rob, though, it's like you really got to go through all the paces to make sure that any issue he might be having is addressed before you put him back out there. So, Rob is going to be out for the next 2 weeks. Basically, it sounds like he's going to miss all of preseason. But he did talk Tuesday at practice about potentially getting back out there in time for the regular season. Had a little smile on his face when he was asked that. So I think Rob's goal and the team's goal is to really lay it low for these next 2 weeks, continue his rehabilitation, and then once the regular season rolls around, kind of start gradually increasing his load. And at some point in time early in the regular season, hopefully Rob's able to get back out there. But let's go ahead and hear what Rob Williams had to say about that injury at practice on Tuesday before the team heads out to Seattle to begin preseason play.
How you feeling, Rob?
Feeling good, my bad. Feeling good. Working out a little bit more, ramping up a little bit more, Getting right. Shout out my dog, Shay. He been working too, so trying to get there.
Yeah, speaking of Shay, how you doing, keeping him up, his spirits up when obviously he's dealing with injury he would rather not have?
Yeah, you never want to go through injuries, but it's part of the game. It's part of this high-intensity game that we play. I just came off a long stint missing the game, so I know, the look that players can get in their eyes when they miss the game, you feel me? But I just keep telling them it could be worse. And, thankfully, Shaedon is not in bad spirits, Obviously, when you get the news, it messes with you, but he been coaching the guys up, just doing his part, man, even on the sideline.
You think you're going to be back by the start of the season?
They gave me a 2-week timeline, so what's that? Might line up perfectly. We'll see, man. Yeah, we'll see.
So what are you able to do right now? It's just like you. Actually, I'll just leave it at that. What are you able to do?
Yeah, they got me ramping back up on court now. Hamstring kind of sensitive, so when it first happens, you got to take it lightly. Doing different strength tests, passing that, checking those boxes to get on the court, obviously. And I've been on the court the past 2 days, wrapping up. Got to pass a couple more checkpoints, ramp up a little bit more. Obviously, conditioning on the bike as much as I can, weights as much as I can, and trying to meet the requirements for sure.
So were you doing things on the court with the team, and then you kind of decided to pull back a little bit?
Yeah, that's how I do it sometimes. I'll do some of the drills they do, some of the stretches and activities they do, and then get into like an individual workout on the side for sure.
But so far, everything's responding well to treatment and all the stuff you had to do.
Yeah, so far I'm really excited about how it's going. Been feeling good. Best part is not getting worse every day. Feeling better every day. So.
I have to imagine that's the longest you've been out of playing basketball in your life. What kept going?
Seeing these guys, bro, being around the game. When I got hurt, I had to sit down for a while. I had to be in the house for a while. And I had to get out, bro. I had to see the game, see the fans, see all that. And it was just my job and my love for the game, for playing the game. So, like I said earlier, I tell Shaedon, bro, I was just down for a whole season, plus more than that, you feel me? Like, shit, it could always be worse.
So there you go, Rob Williams talking about not only his injury, but Shaedon Sharpe's injury as well. Obviously a guy in Rob Williams who supremely talented, but has just had injury issues throughout his career. So really a guy who knows how to deal with that and knows how to probably kind of console guys who are also going through that. Rob had the patella injury last year. I think he only played 8 games before, he had to be shut down and have the surgery again. So these kind of injuries that Rob is probably going to have during the season, these kind of minor strains here and there, not necessarily unexpected. Hopefully he's able to kind of get that behind him and have a good run of health because, one, the Blazers could really use that. And two, Rob is such a great guy. As you can tell from any clip of Rob talking, like he's just a guy that players are drawn to. People are drawn to. And, when you're that kind of person, people just want to see you have success in anything. And, as fans of the team as well, you obviously want to see Rob come out and have success here in Portland. So, really hopeful for Rob that he's able to get that squared away, and hopeful for Shaedon too that, the 4 to 6 week timeline is able to be adhered to. As I mentioned, they've got him in a sling right now, so I'm guessing the goal is to really keep him immobile for as long as you possibly can, let that labrum heal, and hopefully get back out there probably gradually. I'm guessing I've noticed that more often than not lately with the team, when they give a timeline, it's usually towards the end of the timeline, and usually even at the end of that timeline, that's just for kind of the beginning of a player re-entering kind of the broader team perspective. And what I mean by that is actually getting into games. So, that 4 to 6 weeks, does that mean that even if he's completely healthy, that Shaedon's going to be back on that 6-week timeline? One would hope, but I don't think that's necessarily something you should assume. And really, too, with this season, you want to get guys out there. You obviously want to see what these guys are able to do. You need to start the process of getting better, even if it's not necessarily going to result in wins on a night in, night out basis. And you just can't do that if you have guys that are injured, particularly guys like Shaedon Sharpe, who are so incredibly important to what I think this team is trying to do going forward. So, they're definitely going to go through their paces and take their time with Shaedon. Because, again, this season they would like to win some games. They don't want to go out and not put their best foot forward. They're going to go out and try to win games. I know there's an assumption out there that you look at the draft and you look at where they're at right now that, maybe that's not going to be the case. I have been told over and over and over again that they're going to go out and try to win. Chauncey Billups wants to win. Joe Cronin wants to win. How much of that's going to happen? Well, we'll see as the season progresses. But what I'm saying is that, this is definitely probably not the season where you're rushing guys back from injury because you want to see them get out there because you want to win games or you need to win games. The team does have a little bit of leeway when it comes to that because they know that, wins are probably going to be hard to come by regardless, and there's no point necessarily in rushing a guy back to try to get a win on one night or another when there might be any potential for that player to have issues going forward with that injury. So I expect they're going to take their time with both Shaedon and Rob. Hopefully both those guys are able to get out there this season, have a great run of health, but one way to do that is to make sure that you're not putting them in positions where they're coming back too fast, and I think the team is really, again, going to be really measured about the way they bring guys back this year. So hopefully it won't be too awful long, but unfortunately it's already happened at training camp. One player not injured, Deni Avdija, winning the MVP honors at FanFest in his first FanFest at Moda Center on Saturday. Thank you so much to those of you who came out to Moda Center on Saturday. It's always a great event, always great to get people back in the gym. First chance to see everyone back in the gym, both the players and the fans, and the people of the arena staff as well, too. For someone who's worked for the team for a long time, I always love getting a chance to see the part-timers that you only see during the season. So great event. Deni came out and won MVP, really seemed excited about kind of the interaction with the fans. I mean, and legitimately excited and enthused by it. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've got pretty good radar of when guys are kind of shining you on. It really seemed like Deni was having a great time and was touched by kind of the fan support at Moda Center. Team Black won, I think, 27-24 versus Team Gray. Deni on the winning team. Obviously, no Shaedon Sharpe, no Rob Williams III, no Matisse Thybulle in the FanFest scrimmage as well. But good times had by all. Another great fan fest. Deni getting his first taste of kind of what it's like to be a Portland Trailblazer. You guys did a great job of kind of ingratiating him into the team, and he felt that as well, which I thought was worth mentioning. Is that it really seemed to me that Deni was kind of legitimately touched by the support that the team had at FanFest. Also wanted to mention too, Deni, real fast, just because we had it wasn't an issue necessarily, but there was this quote going around that Chauncey Billups had said that Deni Avdija was the best player on the team, and I remember seeing it a few days ago and thinking like, I don't remember Chauncey saying that. Like, and that's not the way Chauncey talks, and sometimes, you miss things here and there. And sometimes, you get to the scrum a little bit late, maybe you miss something. Sometimes you're kind of thinking about the next question you're going to ask. So maybe you're not as actively listening to the answer as you should be. But in my head, I was like, boy, I just don't recall him saying that. And again, not only because I don't remember him saying that, but that's just not the way that Chauncey Billups, in the time that I've been working with him this entire time in Portland, really kind of talks about things and talks about players. It's just not kind of how he converses about those things. And so I thought it was interesting at practice on Tuesday. Chauncey mentioned, he's like, hey, I was on Sirius XM radio and they asked me about this quote about me and saying Deni was our best player. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I never said that. So that was one of those situations where, something got aggregated, and then I think maybe it got translated and then aggregated. and I kind of lost maybe some of the translation in between. Chauncey talks about like guys who look like the best player in the gym on a particular day. Very likely he said that about Deni at some point in time, but he said that about like 4 or 5 guys this season. So always just makes sense to when you're viewing these things, particularly with aggregation now, particularly on Twitter where there is no verification anymore about anything, to just if something sounds a little weird, maybe follow up on it a little bit too. And it was one of those things too where like I didn't want to say anything about it, even though I was pretty sure that it wasn't true or at least a misquote, because I wasn't entirely sure myself either. But I remember seeing it over and over and over again and being like that just doesn't sound right to me. Turns out it wasn't. So those of us who have been covering the team for a while, we generally kind of, we're the ones asking the questions. So when a coach or a player says something interesting, generally it's probably going to be someone that was in the media scrum who's going to point that out because we were there, and most of us have been in this business for a while and we have pretty good news sense. And yeah, if Chauncey Billups had come out and said Deni Avdija is our best player, I'm pretty sure one of us probably would have done something with that, but that wasn't actually the case. So doesn't really matter all that much, and particularly, and that's a positive thing too. It's not like you're like, this guy stinks and then we have to go correct the record. But it's one of those things too where it's like you just want to make sure that you're being quoted accurately and that you're actually the things that you say are actually being attributed to do, not necessarily being taken in a different context. So that was one of those things too where it doesn't matter. It's not like it's a big deal or anything, but it's always worth remembering that, particularly in this new media landscape, whatever that means, sometimes if something sounds a little funny, chances are it might be a little funny. So you might follow that up a little more before you go with it too strong. Real quickly, as I mentioned, the Trailblazers having practice on Tuesday at their facility in Tualatin. Team leaving on Tuesday, heading north to Seattle to have a couple days of practice before going and playing the Clippers at Climate Pledge on Friday. 7:30 start time for that one. That's actually technically a Clipper game. Not that it really matters all that much. I know that the Blazers aren't broadcasting it. I'm not entirely sure about the Clippers. That's probably something I should have figured out before I came on here. But I'll give you that information here soon enough, maybe even in the notes of the show. So the Trailblazers going up, going to have a practice somewhere in Seattle. And then it sounds like they're going to go to Jody Allen's house as well and have a practice there. Chauncey Billups had mentioned that today, so I think I'm okay to probably say that as well. Something the team usually does once every couple years. It's always a fun little event to go to Jody's. And obviously it's a very nice place. There's a gym. It's kind of fun to have a practice in a different setting. So the team will be in Seattle for the next couple days, play the game on Friday versus the Clippers, Saturday off, fly to Sacramento to face the Kings on Sunday. Then they'll come home to finish off their preseason schedule versus Ulm, the German team, on Wednesday, October 6th. A number of players on that German team, Ulm, that supposedly are expected to go in the first round of the next couple drafts. So maybe a little more interested in that one than you typically would versus an international team. And usually when you play an international team, there's kind of like a reason for it. And it sounds like maybe the reason this time is, one, we do have a coach now on staff who coached in Germany for a while. And two, when you have players who you think are going to be NBA guys, our front office wants to schedule those games because they get a chance to see those guys live and in person versus other NBA talent. So, that's a game where, again, it's a preseason game, but it probably has a fair amount of value for Portland's front office in terms of a scouting opportunity as much as it does for the team in terms of an opportunity to get ready for the regular season. That game versus Radio Farm Ulm is on October 16th. Again, that's a German Bundesliga team. And then they finish off their preseason schedule versus the Utah Jazz on Friday, October 18th at Moda Center. Tickets for the game versus Ulm and for the Jazz are on sale now. Go to trailblazers.com to get your tickets. All right, before we wrap up on this edition of the Briefcase, I figured with the news that Shaedon Sharpe is going to be out for at least 4 to 6 weeks, that it made sense to look at the starting lineup or hear from the starting lineup in terms of the guards. I think at this point, it was a competition between Ant and Scoot and Shaedon, and, what was going to be the rotation there? Was it going to be Ant and Shaedon? Was it going to be Ant and Scoot? Was it going to be Scoot and Shaedon? Now we pretty much know it's probably going to be Ant and Scoot at least for the first month and a half of the season until Shaedon's able to get back out there. Always possible they maybe go with Chris. Always possible they maybe throw Matisse out there as well. But I think generally we can assume that both Anfernee Simons and Scoot Henderson are going to start the season as Portland's starting backcourt. So I figured it makes sense to hear from both those guys who talked at Media Day about the season. First up, got to go with the vet, Anfernee Simons, even though he's still quite a young man, but he is a vet on this team. Ant had quite a few things to say at Media Day about his place on the team, what he's been working on, maybe some of the comments he had last season about wanting to win and kind of where he stands in terms of where the team is at in the rebuilding process, and a few other things as well. Here's what Anfernee Simons had to say at Media Day last week.
And when you look ahead to this year, what excites you?
Obviously, the opportunity to compete. We got a lot of, a couple new players on the team, or DC and Deni, and so I'm excited to go out there and, build chemistry with them as well as, all the young guys still building chemistry as well too. So I'm just excited to, continue to prove myself and prove that we could be a good team as well.
Do you feel old?
Nah. Sometimes I do, but when you're a young team, make you feel old, but essentially compared to the league, I'm not old, so yeah, at all. So on this team, I can feel old sometimes for sure.
And the franchise's goal is to develop and build. That means securing high draft picks. You stated at the end of last season you want to win. You're getting a little tired of this. How do you feel about still being here? Do you want to sort of see this rebuild through and be here when it turns the corner, or do you hope maybe to land somewhere else at some point?
No, I mean, for sure. I think everybody's goal is to win. Obviously, however long that takes, that's the question. But we want to win as soon as possible. As competitors, as players, we all want to win. So for me, it's still the same thing. What can I do to get better for us to win? And so that's the question that I have to ask myself and be realistic as possible and do everything it takes to become that. I'm here. They promised me, obviously, signed me to a good contract, and they believe in me a lot. So I'm here, as a Blazer. So for me, it's just that simple. You know what I mean? I'm just locked into what we need to do to get better.
Ant, did you have conversations with Joe and the front office and the organization this summer about kind of the timeline of the rebuild and kind of where you fit into that?
Not necessarily. Obviously we just have conversations about what we can do to get better. What can I do to get better to help the team, and that was pretty much it. You know what I mean? It's really that simple when you're dealing with obviously a young team that's trying to develop and win. Everybody has to be aware of what the things they need to get better at, and so for me, it's just that simple.
With your game individually, is there anything you worked on specifically over the offseason, or is there anything you're going into this season saying, I want to do X, Y, Z better?
Obviously, approaching the offseason is, first, you're trying to get healthy as possible to be ready for the season and to kind of touch base on kind of everything. Obviously, y'all know the things that I'm not good at, so, you know what I mean? So, those things are obvious, you know what I mean? So I'm not afraid of admitting those things and trying my best to become better at that as possible. So, and I understand the magnitude of me, becoming better at some things. So, those things are just, being real with yourself and saying, I need to be better at this.
And you've come in every year and you've had some sort of goal set aside kind of on top of that. What are kind of your individual goals in a season where everybody's striving to win, everybody's striving to get better, but what are the things that you kind of jot down that you're looking at and say, I want to do X, Y, and Z by the end of the season?
Obviously, my individual goals haven't changed. Obviously, some of the goals I haven't reached those things, like being an all-star and stuff like that. So those are still the goal. And obviously as a team, it's just, getting better as a team and competing at a high level each and every night and seeing where that takes us.
What do you think Donovan and Deni will bring to the team?
Obviously with Deni, his versatility, his ability to do everything pretty well. And so that's going to help us out a lot when, when the game and, teams are denying me full court and not trying to let me catch the ball, or, he could take the pressure off of me a little bit, handling wise, and be able to run the action. And I'm able to play off ball, which, hopefully can get me, open a little bit more as well, too. So his ability to do everything on the court, helps out a lot. And obviously with DC, his defensive upside and his ability to block shots and alter shots is pretty special. He's a big kid, so, his ability to impact the game in that way is going to help us out a lot.
Chauncey talked again about playing fast, being aggressive. That was the goal last year, but obviously injuries derailed a lot of that. You, Shaedon, and Scoot, I think, missed 105 games combined. How much are you looking forward to being able to get out there, hopefully stay healthy, and just run and gun and do what you do best?
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Obviously, we have a young team that's very athletic and, can do a lot of different things. So I think us playing fast, plays to our advantage when we're playing teams. So I'm pretty excited about that. He's been emphasizing that for the past couple of weeks, and I think we're going to be better at it, this year than we were last year for sure.
You started the last year starting next to Scoot. What do you think? Where do you think that pairing can grow in year 2? How can you guys complement each other's game?
Just being out there on the court with each other. Obviously, it wasn't that much time on the court with each other, so it's always going to be growing pains during that time. And so we're just trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out what he likes to do. He's trying to figure out what I like to do, and also he's trying to figure out, the game in general, the NBA game in general. So there's a lot of things going on at one time, so that can make it seem like it looks bad, quote unquote. But I think just obviously just being out there on the court with each other, for a long period of time is going to help us out a lot.
Good stuff there from Ant. Oh, a guy who, one, has become more vocal as he's gotten older, as you typically do. 2, just kind of understands the way the media works. I thought his answer is like, you guys know what I don't do well. Like, you know what I need to work on, which I thought was an interesting way to kind of put it back on the media there, too. Good perspective from Ant. I've gotten a real good vibe from Ant so far during training camp. I think he's happy. I think he's content. I think he does want to win. But as I mentioned before, the entire team wants to win. Like, they're not entering the season being like, hey, we're going to lose. They're going out there with the expectation that they're going to be competitive on a night-to-night basis. And Anfernee Simons is going to be leading that charge. All right, let's go ahead here for Scoot Henderson as well. Scoot kind of made some news with his media day interview, talking about food. And I think, like, he's talking about, like, the sustenance, or I shouldn't say sustenance because that's too much like food. But, for me, like, when I go back and watch the clip, it's like he's talking about the notion of the things that you're taking in your rookie season as food. And people talk about like, oh, he ate or she ate that. Like, that's the stuff he's talking about. Scoot's talking about that kind of slang in terms of eating. So like the fact that it kind of caught on at Media Day 1 is kind of fun. But 2, also, like, I don't know that people really understood what Scoot was talking about there. Like, he was talking more kind of metaphorically about the things that you learn, the things you pick up, the things you take in over the course of a rookie season as food. So, there's that. There's obviously Scoot talking about kind of starting and where he's at in terms of his confidence and his expectations going into his second season. Here's what Scoot Henderson had to say about food and about himself at Media Day last week.
Scoot, now that you have a couple months of distance from it, kind of what do you look back on about your rookie season and kind of what you learned from it?
I look back at the food, the good food that I had, a lot of the food, and then, what I've learned from it. You know what I'm saying? Just all the games, obviously think about all the games every night. Think about the fun I had playing, think about how blessed I was playing, and the fact that I was able to be here at this age, so yeah.
Scoot, do you think you'll be a starter this year, and how important would that be to you?
I think it'd be like I'm controlling what I can, and that's going out there and practice and playing my game, having fun while doing it, cheering on my teammates while doing it, and then that's not my decision to make.
Hey, Scoot, can you talk about what areas of your game you specifically tried to work on this offseason?
I feel like moving around, like moving stronger through my hips, and rather than like kind of leaning and using my back for it. And I'm pretty fast, but I feel like I'm stronger and faster now. But just the training I did with a few of my trainers over the summer, and learning how to move from a different base, and yeah.
Scoot, how much did you grind on developing your jumper this summer? How many shots you get up per day, and how are you progressing?
I grinded a lot, just with the mechanics really and the reps. That's all it is reps and confidence. And then I just built my confidence at my gym at Next Play, and we've been going from there. Just all summer really it hasn't really stopped at all.
Do you feel like your rookie season kind of changed your outlook at all on what you can be as a player in the league, or sort of where do you see Scoot Henderson in a year from now?
I don't think it changed my outlook on how I want to be, who I want to be in this league. I want to be one of the greatest point guards to ever play, and I'm going to stand by that. And I still got that confidence in myself to go out there and perform. When year 2 starts, I feel like I'm even more confident now with the year I have under my belt, and the fun I can have with my teammates now, just getting to know them more personally rather than on the court, and taking it from there.
Hi, Scoot. You went to China this summer. Do you enjoy the time there?
Man, it was fire. Just to see how a different area was, you know what I mean, from Marietta, Georgia, you know what I'm saying? So it was a lot different from just, you know, the roads and stuff like that. And the food was different, and the people were amazing. You know, they treated me with kindness, with respect, and I can't wait to go back out there. So
you go back, you go to China with Puma, and then a lot of, especially young generations, they become fans of you. In the new season, do you have like some of expectations, like because the fans was seeing you can play a better season? So
yeah, for sure, man. I'm excited to get this year started, and I appreciate all the fans in China, and I appreciate my fans here in Portland. You know, they're the best in the world, like I say, and I can't wait to get going.
What's the difference for you, just maybe personally, going into your second year in the league? Do you approach it any differently over the offseason? Did you focus more on maybe technique as opposed to conditioning or anything like that?
I don't think it's no difference. My same goal is to go in and dominate my opponent, dominate who in front of me. Like I said, I feel even more confident, though. I feel even stronger. I feel more intact with my mechanics, with how I move. And the way I see the game now is a little different than last year, so I'm ready.
What have you seen from Deni so far on and off the court, and how do you see the combination between you two, especially when it comes to primary ball handling?
Yeah, Deni off the court is a class A guy, man. He's a good person, really goofy, really funny, for the most part, and I think he just stays to himself, and he has a very unique personality. And on the court, man, he's very versatile. He can play both sides of the ball. He can shoot it very well. He can attack the basket with a bunch of different secret moves that he has, and he's super strong. So I feel like this year for Deni it's going to be a great year for him personally, but as a team, I think he'll help us a lot.
Scoot, how much, if you look back at yourself at this time last year, how much have you grown as a person? And also, Chauncey's talked about playing fast again. That was the goal last year, but it got derailed by a lot of injuries. But how excited are you about getting out there and running and gunning?
I feel I'm super ready to get it going, especially for this year too. Super ready to get playing a lot faster. Last year, I feel like we slowed down with just we couldn't get really a set group of guys to know each other and get to run well with. But over the past year, I grew as a person, just getting, like I said, more intact. And I feel like I'm the same dude, still controlling what I can control, still trying my best in whatever I do. It definitely grew, just my knowledge based off of last year, and reading things and reading the defenses, what they give me, offense on the defensive side, how can I guard a certain player. You know, I think about those things day and night.
Good stuff there from Scoot. As I mentioned, I think at this point, the expectation is going to be that Ant and Scoot are going to be starting together in the backcourt for game one and probably for a while after that. It really probably depends on how long Shaedon Sharpe is going to be out. Again, always a possibility that, you know, they maybe go with a little more size there. And that's the problem with the Ant Scoot backcourt. You know, there's talent there, but you're rolling out a backcourt that's pretty small. So if you go with Matisse, you know, you obviously have more size and more defensive minded, but then, you know, less ball handling and less scoring. If you go with Chris, you know, not the same explosiveness. Chris has been doing a much better job shooting at training camp, at least that's what I've been hearing. So, you know, and he got some starts at the end of last year as well, so he's got some experience there. Again, I think it's very unlikely that it's going to be anything other than Ant and Scoot. So I figured it made sense to hear from both those guys. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you much for joining me. As always, more editions later on this week. We'll also have an edition of The Blazers Balcony with Brooke Olzendam on Wednesday. Go ahead and check that out wherever you get your podcasts on the Trailblazers Podcast Network. As I mentioned, I'll be up with the team in Seattle for the practice and the game. So we'll have some content for you there from Seattle as the Trailblazers begin their preseason schedule, a week of preseason games, rolling into a week of practice, and then the regular season starts. So until we talk next time, I'm Casey Holdahl. Thank you for joining The Briefcase. We'll talk to you soon. Go Blazers.